Hello and welcome to Homicide Hobbies. I'm Andy,
And I'm Claire.
and we're here to talk about some of the disturbing things that go on in the world, past and present. We feel like not knowing doesn't mean the crazy doesn't exist.
So we're going to scar you with the knowing.
Enjoy.
What do you got for us today, Claire? Claire Bear? Are you ignoring me?
Yep.
Why?
Ain't a bear.
It's not like I said Claire Bear wears no underwears. Claire Bear. You know, our mother had some weird nicknames for us.
Yeah. You were the mustard maker. Might have been you
It was
both.
you.
It was not.
It was you. I named you that. Yes, it was. I named it to you because I had never seen baby poop before. And I said it looked like mustard.
No.
Anyway, what do you got for us today, Claire?
Today, we're headed to the state that's nickname is the Equality State. And their motto is equal rights.
It's going to be one of them northern states.
No guesses?
Sorry. No, I have no
You
idea.
you want another hint? You want another hint?
Sure.
The whole state, there's only 2 escalators.
What kind of hint is that?
Okay, fine. I laughed at that one and I threw in a 4th. It's known for its national park, Yellowstone.
Oh. Is it Washington? No. Montana.
Uh,
Yellowstone crosses over a whole bunch of places. Wyoming. What else is over there?
Which answer are you going with, ma'am? You can't just start listing all the states.
I don't know. God, doing these...
Make you realize you don't know the country you live in?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm going to go with Wyoming.
Well, you're right with your 52nd guess. And Wyoming is correct.
Yay.
A little fun fact. Yellowstone does, in fact, go through 3 states. 95% of it, however, is in Wyoming. And 3% is in Montana. And then there's a sliver in Idaho. Washington State is not a part of Yellowstone. So.
Well, it just popped in my head because I knew it was up and over.
I thought for sure you'd guess Montana. Washington State, you threw me.
Yeah, well, my brain's not awake.
You napped yesterday and you're still trying to wake up. But anyway, we're headed to Wyoming.
I don't think we've done a case in Wyoming, have we?
I don't know. I don't think so, but it has a very low population, so I would be willing to bet probably not. But headed to Wyoming in 1964. In particular, August 7th, when Judge Robert McAlfee and his family, which include his wife Betty and 3 daughters who are 12, 8, and 6, head to Jackson Hole, Wyoming from their home in Illinois. I'm glad you laughed because I was like, that's an awful name.
It is an awful name.
And just when I was like, it can't get any worse in the namesake area, they decide to stay at the Wart Motor Hotel. I was like, what the fuck?
If I asked you and Dave, where are you guys going for vacation? You said to Jackson's Hole. I'd be like, ugh. Where are you staying? At the Wart.
The Wart
I feel like
Motor.
you're going to need some antibiotics and whatever else might be necessary on your trip back.
I was like, Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and the Wart Motor Hotel. All right. Again, the family would have dinner together. Then they would head up to their room. They'd tuck their girls in. And Robert and Betty would head downstairs to watch a show in the hotel. They did leave the girls in the room to catch some Z's. They'd be gone roughly 2 hours before they head back up to their room that evening. And be shocked when they walk in and flick the light on and find a grown-ass man, shirtless and barefoot on the floor. Robert would jump on him and pin him to the floor. Betty would run to...
What was he? Was he just laying on the floor or like hiding on the floor? Like he's laying on his back, he's on his stomach, he's napping? Like what?
Well, if you'd let me tell this story...
So many questions.
So Betty would run over to her girls and to make a horrible discovery. 12-year-old Debbie and 8-year-old Cindy were dead in their beds.
Oh, God. What is with you in the kid cases? You're a sick son of a bitch.
Fortunately, a police officer nearby would hear Betty screaming, "Oh my God, this man has killed my babies," and go rushing to the room. He would enter the room to find Robert throttling the unknown man. He would cuff the man and move him to the bathroom to kind of get a bearings on what the fuck did I just walk into? Because, mind you, he's just doing his normal milling about when he hears screams and goes running to check it out. So he cuffs the feller and chunks him into the bathroom to wait for backup.
Does the guy wiggle out the window?
No. An initial examination of the man showed dried blood on his body and his underclothing. Now, police would begin their investigation. The man had apparently entered their hotel room by stacking wood for a makeshift step up to their window to scale the back wall of the hotel. Then he pulled the window screen out and climbed his disgusting ass inside. He even removed his shoes, I would assume, so he could tippity-toe it over to the bed.
It's because he needed some extra traction to climb the wall.
So his shoes were inside the hotel room.
Oh.
So when he went in the window, he took off his shoes. They'll find them in the corner behind the chair.
Was he dressed?
He was partially clothed.
I'm going to say he was taking off his pants, so he took off them shoes.
Perhaps.
You're disgusting, by the way. I don't ever want to hear you judge my cases. Ever.
So he tippity-toed his way to the beds. The man would tear the clothes from 12-year-old Debbie's body, hitting her as she resisted. Then he would proceed to rape her. He was so violent with poor Debbie, he bit off part of her breast before bludgeoning her with a rock that he had found.
Ew.
The rock was still in the room. That's how they know it was the rock. Before he ended up just strangling her to death. Then he moved to little Cindy and treated her much the same as her big sister. While raping Cindy, he would bite off part of her nose before strangling the little 8-year-old. And then there's 6-year-old Susan. She was left unharmed.
That's because they interrupted, it sounds like.
I felt the same way. It's funny you should say that. I feel like something occurred. Either that or she was so crumpled up in the bed, he might not have noticed. Because when the parents get in there, they walk in the hotel room and will flick the lights on. So he's doing all of this in the dark. So my thoughts are, I don't know.
He had to have been watching them, though, because how would he know that the girls were in that room by themselves?
I have no idea, but I thought it was disgusting.
Because what was his plan if he went into the hotel room and it was some grown-ass adults?
I don't know that people do things and have a plan.
Did he restrain the girls?
Shh. Now, mind you, with the girls' parents coming back and finding their girls battered and bloodied, all the commotion would attract attention from people who were also out and about. And soon a crowd would gather outside to kind of just see what the fuck's going on. Why is there all the screaming that police are coming in? What's going on? Then once everybody starts to learn that there's 2 dead little girls in there and they've got that feller inside, the crowd becomes livid, understandably, and would start calling for that guy to be lynched as they're trying to get him out of the hotel room to try to transport him to jail. Because it being a small town and all.
I agree with the crowd.
Yeah, I did too. But I was like, their murders were the first in that town in 20 years.
He was caught literally with his pants down. String him up. Just chuck him out the window he came in. Just let him dangle from that.
Yeah. So the officers would decide to take him to the jail in the next town to ensure that he'd be safe from the growing mob. Now the man would claim that he didn't do it. And he, even no matter how drunk he could have been, he couldn't have done it because he had Native American heritage.
Huh?
I'm glad you had that reaction because I was like, what?
I'm confused.
I'm just going to ruin it for you. But he's not going to talk to police because he'll say he has no memory of it. And other than using the excuse of he has Native American heritage, so he couldn't have done it, is all they get for him.
We really should do videos because I feel like the blinking I'm doing right now goes unappreciated.
I could hear the blinking, actually.
I
don't know. I did the blinking too because that's the first time I've heard that one.
Does he think he has some sort of immunity to being charged? The whole, if something happens on a reservation, regular police aren't supposed to. Is that why he's saying that? He thinks that's going to get him some sort of favor, or he's saying that Native Americans have been victimized and therefore he can't victimize? I don't understand. I don't understand.
I don't know. But so who was the man on the floor, you ask?
A piece of shit.
21-year-old Andrew Armando's Benavides Pixley.
That does not sound like an Indian last name.
I did the same thing. I was like, how far back is that lineage?
Yeah, that sounds like some Italian, and there's something else in there that I heard, but none of it sounded like it was Indian.
Yeah. Well, he happened to be an unemployed drifter that had only been in town 2 to 3 days
Surprise, surprise.
and was staying with another feller. Now, a little bit about Andrew. He was born in New Mexico in 43. Now, his pa would pass away when he's just 3. And I'm not 100% sure what the fuck his mother was doing, but when his dad dies, him and his sister bounce from foster home to foster home for 10 years.
Oh.
And it's only after his mother remarries and the stepfather builds a house in Oregon that the courts release Andrew and his sister into his mother's care again. So I was just like, 10 years?
Why did they get taken?
Well, so when the dad died, they had nowhere to go, but I don't know what the situation was that they had nowhere to go. So it's not important to the story, but I thought that was an interesting 10 years is a long time.
Yeah. Unless they were infants when they were taken, they're almost grown-ass adults.
Right. So he's described as a below average student and would drop out of high school as a junior to go work in forestry. Now, his stepdad would say he was a kind of built young man, but he sure was a nervous feller. Who knows what happened in the foster homes is all I can say. Now, he would end up serving 2 years in the military, but only to get out of charges for passing bad checks. Now, he would serve the majority of his military time overseas in Europe before returning, and he was supposed to be in the reserves for the next 4 years. However, during that chunk is when the murders happen, so the military wipes their hands of him. But he would get out and return to Oregon and then bounce from one dishwashing job to another, one town to another, and just kind of float with the wind. Now, after Andrew is arrested, he'd be taken to the Wyoming State Hospital to just double check to make sure his brain was good to proceed with a trial. And he was deemed sane. Now, under the direction of a doctor and with Andrew's consent, they would inject him with sodium pentothal, which is also known as truth serum, to get a statement from him.
Is that legal?
I thought that was interesting too, because I can tell you, I haven't come across one where they're like, we're going to give you some truth serum to see what happened.
This is some backwoods shit you got going on right here.
Actually, it was interesting, but you also have to look at it from the side of Andrew doesn't have any memory, and he apparently, supposedly, was horrified at the girl's rape and murder, so he'll still stand by even going to trial that he doesn't think he did that. But, I mean, it looks a little bad if they find you bloodied in the hotel room with the bodies, so...
And you're partially undressed.
Right. But so I think that's one reason why he was okay going with the truth serum, because he wanted to see if there was anything in his brain hole that could help. And other than they end up finding out he drank a whole lot of alcohol, there's not anything in there.
Well, I would think that the truth serum wasn't really to help him recall his memory so much as it was to see if he was lying about having no memory.
Yeah.
Now that they done did their truth serum, they needed to hypnotize him.
Well, so other than finding out he drank a ton, that was all they got out of that. They also deemed that he was a psychopath who hated all of society.
What? You lead with that one, okay?
Now, at trial...
No. Let's lead with that. So it turns out he's a psychopath that hates everyone, but he has no memory because he got so shit-faced. Got it. Okay.
So they would proceed to trial, and Andrew would still stand by the whole he didn't do it. He has no memory of it. Now, the girl's dad would attempt to enter the courtroom armed with a pistol, but he stopped, or he probably would have killed Andrew. And a lot of people really couldn't understand how he didn't kill him in the hotel room, because no one would have blamed him if he would have done that.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised.
The way I saw it was he's a judge, so part of him knows that he can't just take the law into his own hands. But at the same time, his wife screaming, a police officer ran in there fairly quick, so who knows, he could have beaten him to death.
He 100% knows the laws and knows that there are plenty of ways around that shit. He literally entered his hotel room to find a grown man in the room where he has found 2 of his 3 daughters murdered. He feared for the life of not only himself, but his family. It's called self-defense.
Mm-hmm. So Betty would testify and bring nearly everyone in the courtroom to tears.
Of course.
She would tell of how she found the naked, battered bodies of her girls, and then she saw the man on the floor. It had looked like he had been trying to get under the bed, but the frame was too low for him to get underneath it, which I thought was horrifying, because could you imagine going in there, finding the bodies of your girls, and then the fellers under the bed?
No, that's stuff of nightmares right there.
So I say all hotel rooms should be required to have a low clearance. But that's when her husband jumped over and put his knee in his back as hard as he could. And that's when she would go running from the room, screaming to the top of the stairs until the officer heard and came running. She then returned to the room and flung herself across Susan, who's the youngest and the live one, to keep her from seeing anything more. She scooped her up, ran down the hall. She ran into a priest who wanted to help, so she handed Susan to him and went running back to the hotel room, hoping and praying that there was something she could do for her 2 little girls.
I'm not judging priests, but
I was surprised because she knows that her other 2 girls are bloodied and in the bed and not making any movement, but I was surprised she chunked her girl off with a stranger.
Yeah.
And went running back, but at the same time, I get the whole, she is so little and she does not need to see any more of that and doesn't need to be in the room for all of that. You've got her dad restraining some feller, and then, I mean, what are your options there?
Yeah. I feel like that little girl has witnessed enough already. So I think the situation being handled can't be any worse than what she had already witnessed going down in that room.
Well, keep in mind, if the lights were off, she only heard all the things.
Okay, your eyes adjust. I've been my bedroom is pitch black, but when something's moving around in there, like a child creeping around, which by the way, that is absolutely terrifying when you have a kid creep in and I wake up and they're just standing there. And it's like, what?
Well, so think about if there's a noise and it sounds scary, you don't think a little kid's going to pinch their eyeballs shut, so then they're just hearing all the things,
Yeah.
hoping they're having a real bad dream.
I know this is kind of not a big deal, but what time did they come back to the hotel room? Do you know? Was it late?
So they were only gone like 2 hours. I figured if they tucked them in around 7, 8, they're back by 9, 10.
So I, for the love of all things, would not tuck my kids in bed and then click the light on after they've napped for several hours.
So I did that whole thing, and this is why I have eyeball covers, because if I don't understand people who, if you know somebody's actively sleeping, who flick the dang light on. That is the rudest thing you could do.
Yeah, let alone children, because if they've been asleep for 2 or 3 hours, good luck getting them back to bed.
Well, I don't know why you wouldn't leave like a lamp or something on.
Yeah.
It said they walked in and flicked the light on, and I was like, well, that was asinine.
Yeah. Maybe they heard something, or because it was a bloody situation, they smelled the blood.
I don't know.
Something seemed off.
Or I also understand that you can't see where you're going to get ready for bed.
It turns out if you wake up 3 children that have slept for 2 or 3 hours, you're not going to be going to bed.
Well, anyway, so she runs into the priest who wanted to help, so she hands Susan to him and then goes running back into the hotel room, hoping and praying there's something she can do for her girls. Now she gets back into the room and runs over and tries to wipe the blood from their little faces with a towel and talking to them, telling them Mommy's here. But the second she lifts them up, she knows it's too late. There's no life in their little bodies. So she covers them with a jacket. Now by this point, Andrew has been handcuffed and she can see that he has blood on his face and his stomach. Now, mind you, at this point, I was like, the blood on his face could also be from the throttling from her husband. But the prosecution would ask her to point to the man that was in the hotel room that night, and she would point to Andrew, and the state would rest their case. Andrew would eventually change his plea to guilty of first-degree murder. The jury would sentence him to death by the gas chamber. Weirdly, he would smile while it was announced. And I thought that was really weird because for somebody who has no memory, I feel like there's a perverted side to him if he thinks listening to all that and then smiling at getting the death penalty.
Yeah, that's
sick.
That's some twisted shit.
Now, he would also direct his attorney to not appeal his sentence and shoot for life imprisonment, because he felt that even though he had no memory of doing that to the girls, if he did in fact do it, he deserved every bit of what he got.
Well, that's good, I guess. I think what it really is if I was ever, well, I can't even compare myself, but I'd rather get put out of my misery than
Right.
spend the rest of my life in a cage.
Same. I think so. That was where I was hoping. That's why he was smiling as like a whew.
Yeah. Huh.
Now, his stepdad would never believe that Andrew had committed that crime. But after 11 months on death row, on December 10th, 1965, Andrew's now 22, he's asked if there's anything else he wants before he gets put down, but he declines. He would be baptized in the prison bathtub to prepare for his death, which I didn't know was a thing. I guess whatever. And then he would be carted to the gas chamber and strapped onto a metal chair in what used to be the old hanging room. I also didn't realize they had hanging rooms. I just assumed it was always outside in the gallows, but I guess when you go real up north and maybe the winter prohibits the hangings outdoors, that they had a hanging room.
I guess it makes sense too, because unless they wanted to make a scene of it,
Yeah.
which I feel like at some point when the Wild Wild West days ended, they kind of ended the whole public hangings.
It didn't seem like it with the mob. They were prepared. They didn't need formalities like a room.
I didn't say that the mobs didn't want the public hangings. I'm just saying that the law done stop doing it.
So he'd get strapped to that chair. Then the door would be sealed shut. Now the prison warden would pull the lever that would release a bag containing cyanide pellets into a mixture of acid under his chair. Several minutes would go by before he would be declared dead. Now, he would take the longest of any other prisoner to die by gas. I don't know if he held his breath for a real long time, but they said he's one of the ones that had the longest death. Then, when they wheel his body out, an ophthalmologist would remove his eyes moments after.
Sorry.
That was the best reaction.
I squeezed my eyeballs shut too.
I forgot about that part, and then when I was rereading my case for edits or typos or anything, I came across that one. I was like, how do I keep forgetting that they did this?
Why? Why did they do this?
I'll get there. But I was like, but the whole other case, like the girls, what he did to them is so horrible that it kind of overshadowed it. And every time I got to the end, I was like, it always catches me because it's just they remove his eyeballs. Seems like an odd thing, but it was. Stop it, or I can't get to the next sentence.
I have goosebumps. That's like my biggest fear is like
having
an
your
eyeball being removed, or like your fingernails getting ripped off, or you know what? Don't torture me because I'll just tell you whatever you want to know. It's not necessary.
He'd be dead because he's already dead. They just wheel his body out and then an ophthalmologist removes his eyeballs.
Why?
Because he had willed his eyes to an eye bank where they would be flown to that morning.
He was in the gas chamber. Aren't they like toxic?
I didn't even know that you could do that. I have no idea. I don't know who got his eyeballs. I didn't know that you could will your eyeballs to an eyeball bank. Actually, I didn't know that there was an eyeball bank, if we're being completely honest.
Well, I know that you can donate your organs, but it's weird that they just donated his eyeballs. Did when
you're gonna have to do some research on your own for that one.
I will not.
I didn't know you could will just your eyeballs.
I didn't either, and you would think from being in the gas chamber.
I was surprised at that as well, because I would think that if you died from poisoning, there'd be trace amounts. But maybe it'd be such trace amounts that you'd be fine. Kind of like eating too many apple seeds.
No.
Well,
just no.
No, maybe whoever got his eyeballs ended up dying and they just blamed it on the surgery.
Yeah, you're feeling dark today, huh?
How could you listen to that earlier part and not be in a dark place?
Well, kind of like how one overshadows the other. I was thinking about the girls at that very moment in time. Thank you for reminding me.
How could you forget them? One had her nose bit off, the other part of her boob, and they were just little babies. I felt real bad for the mom when she ran back and was trying to wipe their faces and make them all better.
Yeah, that's very sad. Those poor babies.
I could see where that testimony was real hard for everybody to hear. but understandably so. Robert would unravel over the death of his girls, which ultimately would trickle into destroying their marriage.
Wow.
On top of that, he would also resign from being a judge because he really just couldn't take all the things anymore.
I wonder if it unraveled their marriage because there was like a fight. I know if we stayed somewhere, if we went to a hotel and Jason wanted to leave the kids to go out to eat or go do anything, I, being overprotective, would be like, no. And if he was like, they're asleep, they'll be fine. It's just going to be for a little bit. And then that happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's really sad.
Well, he would eventually remarry and have a son with his new wife, Charlotte.
What a pig. Not saying he can't move on, but geez.
Betty would not remarry. Now, Susan, who was the 6-year-old that was there during her sister's murders, would go on to get married and have 5 children of her own and seemed to be a healthy young lady.
Did she live mainly with her mom or her dad?
So it was the 60s. I assume she stayed with her mom because you know how the fellers would skedaddle.
Yeah.
And my guess would be if his brain hole is so awful that he has to leave all the things, my guess would be he didn't want to look at Susan. I don't know that. I'm just assuming.
Yeah, he wanted to do a rinse and repeat.
Yep.
Just not repeat all the things, just some of the things.
Yep.
Sick. I don't ever want to hear you judge my cases ever again. This is back-to-back child cases for you.
I don't know why. They just stumbled on there. But really, before I learned to what all he did, the eyeball thing, it was a weird request. But
if I ever need an eyeball transplant or a transplant of any kind, I guess that's why they don't tell you who the who the donor is, so you can't be like, I don't want some child rapist murderer's eyeballs.
No. How about, could I not have any organs donated to me from somebody who died from poisoning?
Yeah. Yeah.
Where's that box to check? But they did things crazy in the 60s and the 70s, so...
Well, thanks for that.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of Homicide Hobbies. If we made you laugh, if we made you cry, or if we mindfucked you for the day, then we thank you for listening. Please write a review on whatever you're listening to us on. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your coworkers. We're freaking awesome. And join us next week for another episode of Homicide Hobbies. I'm Andy.
And I'm Claire.
That's all we've got.